This is not a test. President Joe Biden just announced that he will not be running for re-election. Welcome back to the Kempire channel, your number one source for pop culture news and music, entertainment, reality TV, and so much more. As always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on breaking news when we go live or when we upload. So I thought this was a prank. I really did. But multiple media reports and an official letter from Joe Biden, President Joe Biden, says that he is stepping out of the race. That is happening in November. We're in July. Well, there has been a lot of criticism on whether or not Joe Biden was mentally and physically fit enough to run for president again with his vice president, Kamala Harris. Well, now President Joe Biden has officially stepped out of the race. So this is what President Joe Biden wrote in his official letter to the American people. He says, "My fellow Americans, over the past 3.5 years, we have made a great progress as a nation." He says, "Today, America has the strongest economy in the world. We've made historic investments in rebuilding our nation, in lowering prescription drug costs for seniors, and in expanding affordable health care to a record number of Americans. We've provided critically needed care to 1 million veterans exposed to toxic substances, passed the first gun safety law in 30 years, appointed the first African-American woman to the Supreme Court, and passed the most significant climate legislation in the history of the world. America has never been better positioned to lead than we are today." He says, "I know none of this could have been done without you, the American people. Together, we overcame a once-in-a-century pandemic and the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. We've protected and preserved our democracy, and we've revitalized and strengthened our alliances around the world. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. And while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term." This is coming literally after he was recently diagnosed with COVID. But this has also been years of people saying President Joe Biden is always forgetting things or mixing things up. There have been countless jokes about this. But for them in the last hour, and I know it's not necessarily the last hour, but November is what? Less than 4 months away is this election. And this is when you guys decide to drop out? He says, "I will speak to the nation later this week in more detail about my decision. For now, let me express my deepest gratitude to all of those who have worked so hard to see me reelected. I wanted to thank Vice President Kamala Harris for being an extraordinary partner in all this work. And let me express my heartfelt appreciation to the American people for the faith and trust you have placed in me. I believe today what I always have, that there is nothing America can't do when we do it together. We just have to remember we are the United States of America." So a lot of people naturally assume that Kamala Harris will become the presidential candidate. So as we are covering this developing story and I'm editing this video on the announcement that President Joe Biden has officially dropped out of this re-election, he is now saying that he's endorsing his vice president, Kamala Harris. So he says this in a tweet: "My fellow Americans, I have decided not to accept the nomination and to focus all of my energies on my duties as president for the remainder of my term. My very first decision as the party nominee in 2020 was to pick Kamala Harris as my vice president, and it's been the best decision I've made. Today, I want to offer my full support and endorsement for Kamala to be the nominee of our party this year. Democrats, it's time to come together and beat Trump. Let's do this." Guys, there have been mixed reactions to Kamala Harris since being the vice president. She is our very first female vice president. She's our very first black female vice president. It will be interesting to see. I will say, in a debate, Kamala Harris would be very impressive against a Donald Trump. I remember seeing and loving Kamala Harris when she was a senator. It will be interesting. Are you going to vote for a Kamala Harris and whoever she decides to be her vice president? I don't know if that's what the Democratic Party has decided to do. We also understand that when President Joe Biden made this decision, I'm pretty sure that this was not just his decision. I'm sure this is based off of weeks of conversation, people looking at the numbers, people deciding, and again, with this new information about him being hit with COVID, testing positive for COVID, didn't help. I've been saying, look, I'm sure you guys have your own kitchen table talk, is that I don't know what the Democratic Party was thinking, especially in regards to re-election. The party needs someone that's going to invigorate people on both sides to get out and vote. And I know a lot of people said, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden no matter what because the alternative is Trump. Look, I'm being honest with you. However, that is not enough to motivate people to get out and vote, unfortunately. And a lot of people are not necessarily doing their due diligence and educating themselves on why things are a certain way. I see a lot of misinformation on social media, and that is intentional. But I always tell you guys, I'm never going to tell you to vote for this person or that person. What I am going to tell you is to make sure that you are voting with all of the information necessary and that you are actually voting. And not just voting for president, but voting in your local elections. Because a lot of what you're seeing, a lot of the things that have been overturned are things because of your representatives that you haven't voted for are not representing you the way that you want to be represented. I know some of you see that we talk about all things in pop culture, but voting, elections like this are a part of what people are talking about. It is a part of pop culture. I literally did not believe on this Sunday that we would be reporting to you that Joe Biden Jr. is deciding to step out of the race. I personally wish he would have made this decision a lot earlier, giving whoever takes his place more of an opportunity to build a name for themselves. Guys, we're going to continue to follow this story. It was a full moon last night, so this makes a lot of sense. The buck moon is what it's called. Guys, let's continue this conversation. I want to know your reaction to the news that President Joe Biden has officially dropped out of the presidential race. And what does this mean for the future of America? As always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on breaking news when we go live or when we upload. Thanks for watching.